Good morning, everyone. I am very excited to be in front of you. Kind of a dreary day. Well, it's not Sunday here, but kind of a dreary weekend that we have had. Hurricane's not treating us too well, but the sun will shine again, and we've had some amazing fall weather. It's been very exciting. I've really enjoyed getting outside a lot more. I've been running some. Grace and I go and run at the Arboretum, and it's a good time. I've been doing my homework outside, as many classes as I can outside, and it's just been really nice to get a reprieve from inside and from the oppressive heat that is Alabama. Hopefully you have been getting outside as well. I know it is getting darker earlier, and that sucks if you're getting out at 5 or 6 o'clock. It gets dark pretty quick, but hopefully you're finding some ways to be outside and to get some fresh air. What's very exciting about this change in temperature is it is very feasible for us to have outside events now. So, in 2 weeks, on October 24th, we are going to gather at the church in the parking lot, and we are going to hang out. You're going to bring your own chair, or stand, up to you. And then I have a fire pit, it's like on wheels, so I'm going to bring that. We haven't quite figured out if we're going to do s'mores. Maybe it's going to be bring your own, or maybe we'll package them up ahead of time so there's less touching. Not sure exactly what that'll look like yet, but stay tuned for more details. It is still 2 weeks away. We don't know the time yet because they have not released game time, and I know that's very important. Now that we can't have watch parties, we don't have cable at my house, so we just refresh Google and check the score. But I know many of you are watching the game, of course, so we'll make sure to adjust for that. But do pencil in October 24th, Saturday night, and we'll give you a more specific time pretty soon here. It'll be a good time to be together. We'll be able to spread out plenty because we have the whole entire parking lot. We'll be breathing each other's air, and we'll just be able to be together while also making sure everybody stays safe. Because we do have so much space, if you want to bring a friend, that's cool. You should bring them. We want to bring back, the joy of Wednesday night game nights, and just the fellowship time that we generally have before and after service. This is a great opportunity for us to do that. So please mark your calendars, October 24th. Time, more details will be coming at you soon. So, let's jump into the sermon. Last week, John started us off. It was pretty spicy. Faith and politics. A lot of you, I'm sure, were like, oh my God, I don't know. I'm not sure if my politics align with John's or anybody else's in this church, or I'm not sure. I don't know about this. I would rather not. But I think John did an amazing job setting up the idea that we are not talking about specific things. We are not talking about which party. In fact, John encouraged you to not vote by party. We're not talking about specific issues. What we're talking about is, what does it look like to be an involved citizen and a Christian? We live in this world, and while we're here, we got to do our best to make it the best world. We got to do our best to help people, to show our love for God, and to show our love for other people. And that is exactly why politics belongs in the church. And we've got a presidential election coming up. I'm very excited because I have never voted in a presidential election because I was not old enough the first time. I missed the first one by 2 months, and I was so sad. The first election I voted in was for the primary for the state superintendent of schools, and he was running unopposed, so you can imagine how exciting that was. I did vote for him. He's actually the governor now of Wisconsin, so it kind of worked out for me. Pretty exciting. But anyway, that was rather anticlimactic for me. So I'm very excited to vote. I actually have voted already. But it's a presidential election, so it's a momentous year. A lot going on. And it's important that we pay attention to that as Christians, because as I said, we do live here. We live in this world. We're not supposed to be tied down, but we're here. As John talked about the Babylonian exile, I don't think it really feels like exile most of the time. It's a pretty good world. But we do have a role to play because we live here. So today, my sermon is about the first part of that John Wesley quote that John brought up last week. And it is to vote without fee or reward for the person they judged most worthy. Or, in today's terms, what does political activism look like for Christians? Now that's a scary question. It's an overwhelming question, and it's quite the sermon topic. I was very nervous about it, but I think John did such an excellent job setting us up last week that I think it'll be good. I'm very excited about it. I think that it's important that our church make a good impact on the world. They're supposed to know we're Christians by our love, and I think it's important that we show that. And that's really what political activism looks like for Christians, but that's like super broad. So we're gonna narrow a little bit. John talked about, he gave a quote, I think it was from Bonhoeffer, but I'm not sure, about praying with a newspaper in one hand and a Bible in the other. And praying is the start. It always is the start. But we gotta go do stuff afterwards. So let's start by taking apart this quote. The second half of it, not the second half, the last three words are, they judged most worthy. Now John talked about how we're not supposed to be partisan. And I think that point driven home. Go listen to John's sermon again if you're not sure what I'm talking about. But this extra part here, the person they judged most worthy, I think is really important. Because humans are fallible. We screw up all the time. Well, I do. I don't know about you, but I definitely do. And politicians screw up a lot. Laws have problematic parts. We get to vote on several amendments if you register in Tuscaloosa County this election cycle, and there's always problems. Nothing is perfect. So we gotta pick the best person, the best issue, the best law. I was reminded a lot about this because I am in an American religious history class this semester. And we've been learning a lot about John Wesley. And I very recently learned that he opposed the American Revolution. And I was like, oh my God. I don't know if I can be Methodist anymore. Just kidding. It's not about John Wesley. That's exactly the point. He's a great guy. We're using his quote to do this. We are in his denomination that he started. But he opposed the American Revolution. If we had listened to him, I don't know what would have happened. So he wasn't perfect. But he may have been the one most worthy. But how do we know? As I said before, it always starts with prayer. But we go beyond prayer and we research. Just like when we have our devotional time, it should involve little of this. Not just prayer, but this too. We were given brains. God gave us the ability to think and read and have logic, make decisions, free will, all of that. We're supposed to use it well. So we pray first. We ask for guidance on what issues need to be addressed. Ask for guidance that we remain calm, that we pick the right people, stuff like that. And then we pray for those people we picked and the people we didn't pick. But we also research. We need to know what matters, and we need to know who's going to address what matters. Now, it's important that we look at what matters to Jesus, not what matters to us. It's really easy to say, oh, this person, I like what they're doing. But are they doing what Jesus has asked us to do? Are they the most worthy in Jesus' eyes? Well, everybody's worthy in Jesus' eyes, so that's not a great analogy there, but are they the ones who are following what Jesus asked us to do? Now, easily, we've got two greatest commandments. Love God, love people. Love God means not making idols. Judging that person most worthy. We're not making idols of an individual or of a party. That's loving God. He's number one. These people are just people. Loving people, that's a little harder. Because I don't think anyone is out here voting for a candidate that they believe is going to harm someone. I certainly hope you aren't. But you might be voting for someone who's going to do it anyway. Accidentally. Now, you don't need to become an expert in all the issues in every politician, but it is important to spend a little time looking into official statements, looking into platforms, looking into what people have done if they've already been in office. Now, I'm talking a lot about voting. This is not just about voting. Christian activism is a lot more than that. But there's a very big election coming up. It's my first presidential election I get to vote in. I've actually voted already. And wow, so exciting. The first thing I voted for in my life ever was the state superintendent of schools primary, who was running unopposed. So I walked in, registered to vote, and then filled in the one bubble that I could fill in. Rather anticlimactic, so this year I was very excited. I was like, wow, I get to be really American, get to take part in this process. I'm kind of a nerd, kind of a dork, but I was like, oh my god, thrilled to death that I got to vote. So, it's a big year. But we're going to get back to more than voting in a minute. So if you're like, I've already voted, blah, 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 don't worry about that. We got more stuff coming. Okay, so, we're talking about loving people. Which people are we talking about? Well, all of them, of course. But sometimes some groups need a little more love. We go to Matthew 25, 34 through 40. 25, 34 through 40. It's not on that page. We can look about who Jesus cares most about. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we did all of these things?" I'm paraphrasing. And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." It's pretty powerful when you think about it in the context of voting. Or political activism in general. Because Jesus didn't say that you helped me when I was just chilling, just hanging out. He didn't say, I had lots of friends and you invited me over to a party. Those are good things. It's good to help people in general, to treat them well. But Jesus cares about helping the least of these, the hungry, the sick, the incarcerated, the lonely, the elderly, the tiny, the people who need the most help and the most love are the ones we love first. That's what Jesus tells us to do. Right here, Matthew 25. We're also going to go to James. And I think this sermon series, honestly, could be called Just Read James. If you haven't read James, it's like gut punch, because I think every time I read it, I get a new thing that I'm like, ooh, I was not doing that. It's an intense book, and you need to read it slowly. And if you do not feel like you're punched in the gut when you read James, you gotta read it again. Unless you're really doing some good stuff out there. Okay, we're going to James 1:22 and 25 through 27. But be doers of the word, and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. But those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing. If they think they are religious and do not bridle their tongues, but deceive their hearts, their religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. Now, keeping yourself unstained by the world, I think that's next week's topic. I think that's talking about being partisan, or kind of getting upset with people who you disagree with. So that's not my area. But caring for orphans and widows. Now, this doesn't mean just people who don't have parents and who has spouses have died. It means people who need help. In this time, widows and orphans, they were up the creek without a paddle. Nobody to feed them, nobody to speak for them, no way to get income. They were struggling. They can be used, when he says orphans and widows, to mean whoever needs the most help. So when you're researching, it's important to not look at just people who look like you. Now, you may be in a group that isn't on top. I think it's fairly easy to kind of think about that. I'm young and I'm female. Those are two categories that sometimes are overlooked. So, even though that's a thing that sometimes people talk over, sometimes is overlooked, I still need to look outside myself, because there are other groups who are talked over, other groups who are overlooked. God didn't say, love the people who look like you. He said, love everybody. He said, love widows and orphans. He said, love the sick, the hungry, the unclothed, the incarcerated. So you need to look at people who are different from you and how they're treated by this candidate, how their needs will be looked after. Now, for you, that may include more than just social issues. It may include looking at economic policy and being like, well, this seems like it's going to help everybody. Or this seems like, I'm not going to go into it because this is for you. For you to decide and for you to learn about. But I want to really emphasize that you need to look beyond your box. Whatever boxes you check. If your box is person on Social Security, if it's person with children, if it's married, if it's single, male, female, young, old, whatever your boxes that you check, look at everything. Look at how they deal with the other people. Look at what ways that those people can be protected or hurt. And find the person that you judge most worthy of protecting those people. Most of all, you need to pray about it. You pray first, you pray at the end, you pray in the middle, you keep praying about it. God isn't asking us to do this on our own. He's watching and he knows that it's a difficult time right now. He is with us every step of the way. But it's important for us to ask, to leave that space, and to listen. So that our research is not done in a vacuum, but instead with help from God. We don't need to be doing this alone. But voting isn't the only thing. As I said, I've already voted. You can go vote in person, you can vote absentee, etc. Lots of options. You can vote in person right now, or you can vote in person on the day of. But this sermon, I don't want to just go until November 3rd, because y'all are citizens of the world 365, not just voting on Election Day. Political activism doesn't end with Election Day. That's part of that, the person you judge most worthy. Because they're not perfect, sometimes things are going to need to happen during the year, after they get elected. Or maybe the person that you thought was not the most worthy got elected. There's more to do with that as well. So what does this look like? It might look like campaigning. It might look like helping others vote. It might look like talking to all the people who are in your life who you're like, I don't know if they have the resources to vote. Because they're stuck in their home, they're young, and they don't know what they're doing. It's really hard. There's a lot of information out there, and it's very confusing. But anyway, they're young, they're old, they're stuck, don't have a car. This year especially, they're immunocompromised. Lots of things. Maybe it means that. Whatever that means for you, I'm not going to talk about it. That's your thing. Go do it. Remember, loving God, loving people. If you're furthering those two things, looking out after the least of these, keeping God as the idol, not anyone else, go do it. But there's another really big way that, I don't know, the sermon's kind of long, but I think it's really important, that we are politically active as Christians. And it is in spreading information. I think this may be covered some more in another sermon, but I'm going to cover it today too. Right now I'm doing a giant research project for one of my classes. It's like my 400 level, finish this class to finish a minor. And I'm doing this research project on worldviews. And I'm talking about how conspiracy theories take hold in Christian groups. Politicians try to mobilize Christians. They try to mobilize them on both sides, both parties. But we need to remember that we're not motivated by them, we're motivated by God. But conspiracy groups also try to motivate Christians as a block, as if Christians are all the same. And it's fascinating. And a lot of it comes through spreading information. Now we're going back to James. James chapter 3, verses 1 through 11. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers and sisters, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For all of us make many mistakes. Anyone who makes no mistakes in speaking is perfect, able to keep the whole body in check with a bridle. If we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we guide their whole bodies. Or look at ships, though they are so large that it takes very strong winds to drive them, yet they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great exploits. How great a forest is set ablaze by a small fire. And the tongue is a fire. The tongue is placed among our members as a world of iniquity. It stains the whole body, sets on fire the cycle of nature, and is itself set on fire by hell. For every species of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by the human species, but no one can tame the tongue. A restless evil full of deadly poison. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening, both fresh and brackish water? Now James is really hitting it hard here. And I think it's important, you probably want to pause here and go back and read that again. The tongue is powerful. Information is powerful. Right now, we have the ability to spread information much farther than we've ever been able to spread it. And it's good. It is good to spread information. It's good to talk to other people from far away. But it's not good if we're sharing the wrong things. It's not good if we're talking negative, if we're spreading lies, if we are sharing something that's not true, if we're sharing something that hurts others. Maybe if you're calling out a family member of a politician. Maybe it's slander against a person that isn't necessary. We need to remember not to talk about people, to talk about issues, to talk about God's love, to talk about how someone's not loving others if you're thinking that you need to share something. It's important to verify. Is that information real? There's a certain conspiracy theory group that I'm looking at really close that has been able to infiltrate numerous churches. All of their information is false. But it's widespread, nationwide, because people don't look. And it's hard. There's so much information out there. But it happens. So for us, it's important to just pause, to decide, is this necessary to share? Does this hurt someone? And is it true? All of those things are part of political activism. We've got the world in our pocket. Right here. We can do a lot of things with that. I'm recording right here on a laptop. It's got even more power, even more reach. More than just voting, this is an incredibly powerful source of political activism for Christians. 365 days a year. We need to be careful of what we're doing. We need to remember that we are loving God, we are loving people. We tame our tongues, make sure we are spreading truth and love so that people do know that we are Christians by our love. Someone should be able to scroll through your Facebook feed and think, this person loves God. Can you scroll through my Facebook page and see that? I don't know. I haven't scrolled through it. I think it's pretty empty. I don't really use Facebook. But I do take very special care that no one could scroll through it and say, this person doesn't love God. So let me rephrase what I said earlier. No one should be able to scroll through your social media and say, this person doesn't love God. This person doesn't love other people. That is how we can be politically active as Christians. We show our love in every step, everything that we do. We do that by not being devoted to a party. We do that by loving God, loving others. We do that by praying before we act, while we act, and after we act. We do that by sharing information that is accurate and that doesn't hurt other people or other groups or other individuals or family members. We do that by loving the widow, the orphan, the sick, the hungry, the incarcerated, the stuck for whatever reason, stuck in their house, stuck in a rut. We do that by loving those people. Let's come back to John Wesley's quote. He said, to vote without fee or reward for the person they judged most worthy. Person, not party. Most worthy. They're not perfect. They're not someone to be worshiping. They're not someone to be following. But we want to pick somebody that's going to watch out for the least of these, that's going to love people just the way that Jesus asked us to. If you see somebody out there that's running and they don't seem to love people, and the policies that they're trying to do seem like they don't really help people and that they maybe even hurt people, we're in trouble. We need to be voting for people who are most worthy of our vote. We need to be sharing information that is worthy to be shared. We need to tame our tongue. James says a tongue is a fire, can set a forest ablaze. So we need to keep track of it. We need to make sure we know where it's going. We need to be very careful. Overall, we keep God at the front. We love God. We pray to God. We ask Him for help. We listen to what He says. And we love people. If you would bow your heads with me. Dear Lord, this sermon series is a scary one. Sometimes I'm a little glad that this is happening behind a computer screen. Because emotions are high right now. Tension is high. Lord, but we know that that is not necessary. We know that your love overshadows all of that. Lord, we know that you guide us how to love and who to love. Lord, help us to remember that, to pay attention to it, to not justify actions, but to hold people accountable, to remember that they're not perfect, Lord, that we're not perfect. We make mistakes. Lord, please watch over us for the next month. There's a lot going on, whether that may just be you living your regular life, or debates, or protests, or who knows what all. Lord, there's a lot going on always in every one of our lives. Lord, please watch over that. Help us to keep following you, keep our eyes on you, and keep following what you ask us to do, which is to love you, to love other people, to love the least of these, to love the people that are hurting, that are in pain, that are not looked out for, that don't have the ability, that don't have a voice, Lord. Help us to love them, to treat them well, and to do what we can to give them a voice, to give them a better place, to give them a coat, a drink, food, to go visit them, Lord. Help us to do that. Help us to go out the rest of our day and have a good day, Lord. Be with us today. Amen. Remember, October 24th, mark your calendar in the evening. Again, time will be coming very soon. Other than that, it's been a great day to be together. I have really enjoyed writing this sermon, listening to John's, and kind of being a part of it. I think it's really cool to be a church that isn't just inside the walls of the church. I hope that you can take these words and bring them with you. Hope that you'll go out, have a fantastic day, have some relaxation, have some downtime, and I will see you in person in about 2 weeks.